The Krex Dominion had ruled the galaxy for centuries with an iron grip. Their warships cast shadows over countless worlds, their armies crushed rebellions before they could take root, and their slavers turned entire species into tools for their endless expansion. On the fringes of this dominion, humanity watched and waited, their own survival hanging by a thread. Captain Mira Lawson stood on the bridge of the Eidolon, her expression hard as she studied the holographic map projected before her. Dominion patrols were tightening their noose around Vralis Prime, a labor world that had become infamous for breaking the spirit of even the most defiant species. The Varlak, a race of towering, fur-covered beings with incredible physical strength, were among the Dominion's most prized slaves, forced to mine the rare minerals that powered their war machines. And now one of those slaves had managed to send a desperate transmission. The message was short and garbled, barely surviving the Dominion's communication jammers, but its meaning was unmistakable. "Help us. We are ready to fight." Mira's second-in-command, Lieutenant James Colburn, frowned as he read the report. "We don't even know if it's real. For all we know, it's a Dominion trap." "Maybe," Mira replied, her voice calm but firm. "But if it's not, we have a chance to light a fire where the Dominion thinks none can burn. We can't ignore this." Colburn hesitated, then nodded. The crew of the Eidolon had followed Mira into the void more times than they could count, and while her decisions were always risky, they were never reckless. "What's the plan, Captain?" Mira turned to the rest of the bridge crew. "We go in quiet. Cloaking systems at full power. No weapons fire unless absolutely necessary. We infiltrate the labor camp, confirm the situation, and make contact with the Varlak leaders. If they're ready to fight, we give them the tools to do it. If they're not, we get out before the Dominion even knows we were there." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crew, though the tension in the air was palpable. They all knew the risks of venturing so deep into Dominion space. One mistake, one sensor glitch, and the Eidolon would be hunted down and obliterated. As the Eidolon slipped into warp, Mira retreated to her quarters to review the mission details. The holographic display in front of her showed images of the labor camp, vast fields of mines surrounded by electric fences and patrolled by Krex soldiers. The Varlak worked under brutal conditions, their once proud stature reduced to hunched figures dragging heavy loads. Mira's fists clenched. She had seen the Dominion's cruelty before, but it never got easier to stomach. "Not this time," she muttered to herself. "This time, we fight back." Hours later, the Eidolon dropped out of warp on the edge of the Vralis system. The planet loomed ahead, its surface scarred by centuries of exploitation. Mira stood on the bridge, her gaze steely. "Activate cloaking systems. Take us in, slow and silent." The crew moved with practiced precision, their fear overridden by the quiet determination that Mira had instilled in them. The Eidolon vanished from sight, slipping past Dominion patrols and defense grids like a shadow. As the ship descended toward the planet, Mira felt the weight of their mission settle on her shoulders. If they succeeded, they could ignite a rebellion that the Dominion would never see coming. If they failed, they would be just another casualty in the galaxy's long history of oppression. But failure wasn't an option. Not for her. Not for humanity. "Prepare for infiltration," Mira ordered. "Let's give the Dominion a reason to fear the dark." The Eidolon drifted through Vralis Prime's atmosphere like a phantom, cloaked in cutting-edge stealth technology that absorbed every signal and reflected nothing. Below them sprawled the Krex Dominion's labor camp, a monstrous scar on the planet's surface. Blackened fields of mines stretched for miles, dotted with skeletal machinery and guarded by towering sentry drones. Electric fences crackled with energy, caging the Varlak in their misery. Captain Mira Lawson surveyed the camp through the ship's tactical display. The air was heavy with tension as her crew worked in silence, synchronizing their gear for the mission. "This place is worse than I imagined," murmured Lieutenant Colburn, standing at her side. His face was grim as he studied the layout. They'd got auto turrets, motion sensors, and patrol drones. If we so much as sneeze out of sync, we'll light up every Dominion scanner in the sector. That's why we won't, Mira said with quiet determination. She turned to her team. Remember the plan. We're in and out. No heroics. If things go wrong, we abort, no matter what. This isn't just about this mission. It's about all the others that'll come after it. The crew nodded, though their expressions betrayed their unease. Each of them knew the stakes. Failure meant not just death, but the destruction of humanity's fragile rebellion before it could truly begin. Landing site secured, the pilot whispered, easing the Eidolon into a clearing just outside the camp's perimeter. The ship's landing was so smooth it barely disturbed the dust on the ground. Mira led the infiltration team, clad in matte black exosuits designed to mask heat signatures and blend into the shadows. Beside her, Colburn carried a portable signal scrambler, its compact frame humming softly as it disrupted Dominion surveillance systems within a small radius. The group slipped through the dark like ghosts, bypassing automated turrets and weaving between patrol drones. Every step was precise, every movement calculated. Mira's heart pounded in her chest, but her expression remained calm. She couldn't afford to let her crew see any doubt. At the edge of the mines, they found their entry point, a maintenance hatch partially concealed by debris. Mira signaled for the team to halt and crouched by the hatch, scanning it for traps. Her scanner chirped softly, revealing a basic alarm mechanism. "Rookie mistake," she muttered, disabling it with practiced ease. The hatch opened with a faint hiss, revealing a narrow shaft leading into the heart of the camp. As they descended, the distant sounds of machinery grew louder, mingling with the guttural shouts of Krek's overseers and the labored grunts of the Varlak workers. The team emerged into a dimly lit maintenance corridor, its walls stained with grime. Mira raised a hand, halting the team as a pair of Varlak laborers shuffled past, their massive frames hunched under the weight of metal crates. The humans ducked into the shadows, watching as the enslaved beings trudged on, their faces hollow and eyes devoid of hope. Mira's jaw tightened. "We'll change that," she whispered, motioning for the team to move. The corridor led them to a control room overlooking the central mining pit. Dominion guards patrolled the area in pairs, their weapons gleaming under harsh floodlights. Mira tapped into the camp's surveillance system, downloading schematics and identifying key targets: the communication hub, the weapons depot, and most importantly, the Varlak leaders. "There," she said, highlighting a guarded barracks on the map. "That's where they're keeping the leaders. If we can get to them and arm them with human tech, they'll have a chance to fight back. Or we'll all end up as propaganda trophies," Colburn muttered. "Not if we do this right," Mira replied. She turned to her crew. "Split into 2 teams. One disables the comms hub. The other secures the leaders. We'll regroup at the extraction point in 30 minutes. Move fast. Stay silent." With a final nod, the teams dispersed, slipping into the labyrinth of the camp. Mira's heart raced as she led her group toward the barracks. The stakes had never been higher, but she knew one thing for certain. If the Dominion wanted to crush humanity's spirit, they'd have to catch her first. Mira's team moved swiftly through the shadows of the Krek's labor camp, every step a calculated risk. The glow of floodlights sliced through the darkness in sharp beams, illuminating the broken spirits of the Varlak laborers below. Mira's pulse was steady, but her resolve burned bright. The barracks holding the Varlak leaders loomed ahead, a squat, reinforced building surrounded by patrols and sensor grids. She tapped her wrist communicator, whispering to her second-in-command. "Colburn, report." "Comms hub is in sight." Colburn's voice came back, tense but steady. "We're planting the scrambler now. You'll have your 30-minute window, but after that, the Dominion will notice something's off." "Understood," Mira replied. "Make it count." She turned to her team, signaling for silence. They crept closer to the barracks, their exosuits muffling their movements. A pair of Dominion guards, clad in sleek armor and armed with plasma rifles, stood at the entrance. Mira motioned to Sergeant Hale, her weapons specialist. Hale nodded, pulling a compact dart gun from her belt. With two almost imperceptible theft sounds, the guards slumped to the ground, tranquilized before they could react. Mira and her team dragged their unconscious bodies into the shadows, moving quickly to disable the door's security lock. Inside, the barracks was eerily quiet, save for the hum of Dominion machinery. Rows of cramped cells lined the walls, each one holding a towering Varlak. Their once proud frames were gaunt, their fur matted with sweat and grime. Mira's heart twisted at the sight, but she forced herself to focus. She approached the nearest cell, a laser cutter in hand. The Varlak inside, a gray-furred giant with piercing amber eyes, rose to his feet, towering over her. Despite his condition, his gaze burned with defiance. "Who are you?" the Varlak demanded in a low growl, his voice filled with suspicion. Mira looked him in the eye. "Captain Mira Lawson, Earth Fleet. We're here to help." The Varlak's expression shifted from suspicion to wary hope. "Help," he repeated, as if the word was foreign to him. Mira cut through the cell's energy bars, the faint hum of the field flickering out. "We've been watching the Dominion's grip tighten on the galaxy for too long. Humanity knows what it means to fight for survival. We're here to arm you, train you, and give you a chance to break free." The Varlak stepped out of the cell, his massive form casting a shadow over Mira. "I am Torek, leader of the Varlak resistance, or what's left of it. If you speak the truth, then you have my gratitude." Before Mira could respond, an alarm blared, cutting through the silence like a knife. Colburn's voice crackled through her communicator. "Captain, we got a problem. A patrol spotted us near the comms hub. Scramblers active, but they know something's wrong. You're on the clock." "Understood," Mira replied, her voice sharp. She turned to Torek. "We don't have time for introductions. Can you fight?" Torek let out a low growl, his amber eyes gleaming. "Free my people, and we will show you how we fight." Mira nodded, motioning for her team to start opening the remaining cells. As the Varlak emerged, their despair began to melt away, replaced by simmering rage. Mira handed Torek a compact energy rifle. "Consider this the first of many." The ground shook as Dominion reinforcements approached, the heavy stomps of sentry mechs growing louder. Mira's team fell into formation, the freed Varlak gathering behind them. Torek hefted the energy rifle with a practiced ease. "Lead us, Captain, and we will follow." Mira's gaze hardened. "Then let's remind the Dominion what happens when they underestimate the oppressed." With that, they surged forward, a wave of silent defiance ready to ignite into rebellion. The silence shattered as the first Dominion sentry mech lumbered into view. Its towering metal frame gleamed under the harsh floodlights, plasma cannons glowing a deadly blue. Behind it, squads of Krek soldiers fanned out, barking orders in their guttural tongue. The camp was coming alive, and Mira knew their window was closing fast. "Hold position," Mira ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. She turned to Torek and the newly freed Varlak. "Your strength is your advantage. Focus on taking out the mechs. Leave the soldiers to us." Torek growled in agreement, raising the energy rifle she had given him. "Varlak, with me. Show these slavers the fury they've earned." With a deafening roar, the Varlak charged. Their massive forms crashed into the Dominion forces like an unstoppable tide, fists shattering armor and claws ripping through metal. Torek led the charge, firing precision shots that disabled a mech's leg, sending it toppling to the ground in a thunderous crash. Mira and her team moved with surgical precision, their training and advanced weaponry keeping the Krek soldiers at bay. Colburn's voice crackled through the comms. "Captain, reinforcements are inbound. 3 troop transports just entered the atmosphere. If we don't extract soon, we're done for." Mira's jaw clenched. She knew this mission was never about winning a battle. It was about lighting a spark. But the Dominion's overwhelming response was a stark reminder of the risk they were taking. "Understood," Mira replied, her tone resolute. Prepare for extraction. We'll cover the Varlac retreat. Hale, her weapons specialist, fired a carefully placed EMP round at an approaching mech. The machine's systems fizzled, and it collapsed mid-step. Extraction point's going to be hot, Captain. We need more time. Mira turned to Torak, who was driving his fist through the chest of a Krek soldier. Torak, can your people hold the line long enough to cover the retreat? Torak glanced back, his amber eyes blazing. We will fight until our last breath, Captain. Go. Mira hesitated. She had freed them, but the guilt of leaving them to face the Dominion's wrath gnawed at her. We're not leaving you behind, she said firmly. Torak bared his teeth in what could almost be called a grin. Your people have done enough. Go light more fires. This one will burn long after you're gone. Mira nodded reluctantly, knowing he was right. Hale, Colburn, pull the team back. We're heading to the extraction point. The Eidolon hovered low over the battlefield, its cloaking systems deactivated as its side hatches opened. Mira's team boarded under the cover of suppressing fire, their retreat methodical and controlled. From the ramp, Mira watched as Torak and the Varlac fought with a ferocity that defied their captivity. The Dominion forces were staggering, overwhelmed by the sheer might of their resistance. As the Eidolon rose into the sky, Mira's hands tightened into fists. The mission was a success, but it wasn't enough. This was just the beginning. She turned to Colburn. Broadcast the footage to every rebel cell. Show them what the Varlac are capable of. Let them know the Dominion can bleed. Colburn nodded, a rare smile tugging at his lips. Consider it done. Mira's gaze returned to the planet below, now lit by the fires of rebellion. The Dominion's grip had begun to loosen, and humanity's silent liberation was only just starting. The Eidolon cut through the vast emptiness of space, its engines running in silent mode as it darted between asteroid fields to evade Dominion patrols. Inside the ship, the atmosphere was tense but purposeful. The crew moved with quiet efficiency, reviewing intelligence and preparing for the next phase of their mission. The footage of the Varlac uprising had been sent to rebel cells across the galaxy, and Mira knew it would spark hope. But it would also provoke the wrath of the Dominion. In the briefing room, Mira and her officers stood around a holographic map of Dominion-controlled sectors. Bright red markers indicated known Dominion strongholds, while blue signals represented scattered rebel activity. The number of blue markers was growing, but not nearly fast enough. Initial response to the footage has been strong, Colburn reported, his fingers dancing across the control panel. We've had over a dozen rebel cells reach out, requesting coordination. The Varlac uprising is spreading, but the Dominion's already moving to crush it. Mira leaned over the table, her brow furrowed. How bad is it? Bad, Colburn admitted. They've sent elite suppression units to Vralis Prime. Entire fleets are mobilizing to contain any sign of rebellion. The Varlac don't stand a chance without reinforcements. Sergeant Hale crossed her arms. We could go back, give them air support. With the Eidolon's stealth systems, we might be able to. No. Mira cut her off, her tone firm. We can't afford to get bogged down in one battle. The Dominion wants us to react emotionally, to overextend ourselves. If we fall into that trap, we lose everything. Hale opened her mouth to argue but stopped when she saw the determination in Mira's eyes. What's our next move then? Colburn asked. Mira straightened, her gaze sweeping across her crew. We keep the momentum going. The Varlac uprising has shown the galaxy that the Dominion isn't invincible, but hope alone isn't enough. We need to arm the rebels, organize them, and strike at the Dominion where it hurts most, their supply chains. Colbert nodded. We intercepted communications about a Dominion weapons convoy scheduled to pass through the Carsa Nebula in 3 days. It's heavily guarded, but if we hit it, we could cripple their ability to resupply suppression units. Mira's lips curled into a grim smile. Perfect. We'll intercept the convoy, seize the weapons, and distribute them to the rebel cells. The more we weaken their control, the harder it'll be for them to recover." Hale smirked. "And maybe we'll give the Dominion a taste of their own medicine." Mira's expression hardened. "This isn't about revenge, Hale. It's about survival. For humanity, for the Varlak, and for anyone who dares to stand against tyranny. We fight smart, not out of anger." As the crew dispersed to prepare for the mission, Mira lingered by the holographic map. Her mind raced with the possibilities and the risks. The Dominion was a hydra, its heads multiplying with every strike, but she knew its heart was vulnerable. She clenched her fists, her resolve steeling. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, the galaxy was beginning to see the cracks in the Dominion's armor. And Mira intended to exploit every single one. The Eidolon lurked at the edge of the Karsa Nebula, its sensors sweeping the dark void for signs of the Dominion weapons convoy. Mira stood at the ship's bridge, her eyes locked on the swirling cloud of gas and dust that made the nebula a treacherous graveyard for unwary ships. The swirling particles and radiation would obscure their presence, providing the perfect cover for a strike, but only if they timed it perfectly. "We're in position," Colburn reported, his fingers flying over the controls. "The convoy is expected in approximately 30 minutes. It's an old freighter, slow, heavily guarded, but nothing we can't handle with the Eidolon's speed and stealth." Mira nodded. She had prepared for this strike meticulously, knowing that if they failed, the Dominion would retaliate with overwhelming force. "Take us in. Full stealth. No mistakes." The ship slipped forward like a shadow, the nebula enveloping them as they crept toward the convoy's expected route. Mira's gaze flicked to the holographic display, showing the convoy's coordinates, a series of moving red dots growing closer. The freighter was flanked by 2 heavily armed escort ships, each one bristling with weapons. "It's just like the intel said," Hale muttered, studying the convoy's path. "Big ships, slow and vulnerable, if we hit them in the right spot." "We'll take out the escorts first," Mira said, her voice cold with calculation. "Then we board the freighter and seize the weapons. No distractions, no casualties. In and out." Colburn's voice was low but focused. "I've already hacked their comms. They'll think we're just a glitch in their sensors. As long as we disable their jammers, they won't know we're there until it's too late." Mira gave a sharp nod. "Do it." The ship's engine hummed quietly, but the tension on the bridge was palpable. Hale and her team were already suited up for the boarding operation, their weapons checked and rechecked. Mira took a moment to study her crew. Each one of them had chosen to follow her into this war. It wasn't just about freedom. It was about a future. And as their leader, it was her responsibility to see that future realized. The first escort ship appeared on the sensors. It was coming into range. Perfect timing. "Ready," Colburn said, his voice steady. "Then let's do this." Mira's tone was sharp, commanding. "Engaging now," Colburn confirmed. He triggered the ship's weapon systems, releasing a barrage of precisely aimed missiles that tore through the escort ship's shields. Within seconds, the ship's defensive systems flickered and failed, leaving it exposed. Targeting the engines, Hale called from her position in the armory. "We'll disable them long enough to board." With a flash of light, the second escort ship was hit, its thrusters sputtering and failing as its systems overloaded. The convoy was vulnerable, now floating aimlessly. "Good. They're blind," Colburn said. "Now we board. They won't have much time to react." Mira's voice cut through the noise. "Team, prepare for insertion. Move fast and silent. We hit hard. No room for error." The Eidolon dropped out of stealth mode, its sleek form materializing from the nebulous haze, now visible to the freighter and its escorts. As the boarding team prepared to deploy, Mira watched through the main viewport as the freighter's dark silhouette loomed ahead. Its weapons still powered down, but its crew scrambling to regain control. Within seconds, the Eidolon's docking clamps locked onto the freighter's hull, and the team scrambled into position. Torak, now part of Mira's trusted team, stood ready, his massive form an imposing presence in the cramped space of the boarding bay. "Ready," Torak grunted, adjusting his rifle. "Move out," Mira ordered. The airlock hissed open, and the team surged forward, leaping onto the freighter's surface. Mira's pulse quickened as they made their way to the entrance hatch. She could hear the Dominion soldiers inside, their voices panicked as they scrambled to defend their valuable cargo. But Mira knew there was no escape. With a sharp, fluid motion, Hale breached the door, and the team stormed in. The first Dominion soldier barely had time to raise his weapon before Colburn's shot took him down. The chaos had begun. "Clear the decks," Mira commanded, as the sound of gunfire erupted through the corridors. "We're taking what's ours." The freighter's interior was a maze of narrow hallways and cramped storage rooms. Mira's team moved with precision, their footsteps muffled by the heavy boots and thick walls of the Dominion vessel. Every corner was a potential threat, but they were prepared. Every shot, every movement was calculated, every soldier taken down with ruthless efficiency. "Clear," Hale's voice rang through Mira's earpiece. "We've reached the storage bay. Weapons are secure, but I'm seeing signs of reinforcements incoming." Mira's pulse quickened, but she remained calm. "Hold them off. We need to get those weapons back to the Eidolon before more of them show up." "We'll keep the pressure on," Colburn chimed in. "I'm blocking their comms, should slow them down a bit." As Hale's squad fortified the storage bay, Mira moved quickly toward the central command area, flanked by Torak and her most trusted operatives. The sounds of Dominion soldiers shouting orders and preparing for a counterattack echoed in the hallways. The clock was ticking. Suddenly, the freighter's lights flickered, and a high-pitched alarm blared through the ship. Mira's eyes narrowed. "They've activated the self-destruct sequence. We've got minutes at most." "Captain," Hale's voice crackled through the comms. "We've got Dominion forces closing in fast. There's no way we're getting all the weapons out in time. Abort the mission. Take the high-value weapons and get back to the Eidolon," Mira ordered, making the split-second decision. The mission was a success, but the stakes had just been raised. "We'll cover your retreat." Torak growled low, frustration flashing across his features. "This is not how we fight. We leave no one behind." Mira met his eyes, her own resolve unshakable. "We're not leaving anyone behind, Torak. We're going to stop this ship from blowing us all to hell first." Her team moved as one, heading for the command center at the ship's core. It wasn't just the weapons that mattered. It was the entire convoy, the key to the Dominion's resupply routes. If they couldn't stop the self-destruct sequence, the Eidolon would never get out in time. The command center doors were sealed tight, but Mira's hands were steady as she activated the override. A brief moment of silence hung in the air, and then the doors hissed open, revealing the control room, a nest of Dominion officers furiously trying to override the lockdown. Mira and Torak entered the room, weapons raised. "Clear the room," Mira barked as the Dominion soldiers scrambled for cover. Torak was the first to move, his speed and raw strength overwhelming the soldiers. In seconds, they were on the floor, unconscious or incapacitated. Mira's eyes scanned the control panels, searching for the deactivation command. "Captain," Colburn's voice broke through. "I've hacked into their network. You've got 30 seconds to input the override code before the countdown hits 0. Mira's fingers danced across the console, inputting the series of codes that Colburn had fed her. The countdown timer continued to flash ominously in the corner of the screen, ticking down the moments until the ship would explode. Her heart raced as the system hummed to life. With a final command, the countdown halted. The ship's self-destruct system was disabled. "Time's up," Mira muttered under her breath, exhaling in relief. "Good work," Torak grumbled, his sharp eyes scanning the now-quiet control room. "Now we get out." Hale's voice came through again, weapons loaded and secured. "We're ready to move out. You'd better hurry. Reinforcements are almost here. Mira's team moved quickly, making their way back to the Eidolon with the Dominion freighter now in their rearview. As they emerged back into the cold expanse of space, Mira watched as the freighter's hull slowly turned into a fading speck against the backdrop of the nebula. The mission was far from flawless, but it was another victory in a war that was just beginning to tilt in humanity's favor. And as the Eidolon soared toward its next target, Mira knew this was only the beginning. The Eidolon was on the move once again, its engines thrumming in the quiet vastness of space. Mira stood at the helm, her hands resting lightly on the controls, but her mind was far away. The freighter mission had been a success, but it had come at a cost. The Dominion's response would be swift and brutal. They knew the resistance was growing, and soon, the entire galaxy would be ablaze with the fight for freedom. As the ship passed the Carsa Nebula, Mira's thoughts lingered on the mission's results. The weapons had been secured, but more importantly, they had proven something far greater to the galaxy. The Dominion was no longer invincible. "We've sent the weapons to the rebel cells," Colburn said, stepping beside her, his voice low. "They're mobilizing as we speak. The Varlak are already preparing to strike back at the Dominion's strongholds." Mira nodded, her expression hardening with resolve. "This fight is far from over. We've got more than just weapons now. We've got momentum. We've shown them what we're capable of." "It's more than that," Colburn added. "The message we sent to the rebels isn't just about freedom. It's about unity. They know now that there are forces they can rely on." Mira turned to him, her eyes sharp. "And we'll need all of them. The Dominion won't stop coming. Every victory only makes them angrier." "I know," Colburn said quietly, "but we're making them bleed. They're scared." Mira's lips curled into a faint smile. "Let them be scared. They should be." Meanwhile, in the Eidolon's main hold, the crew was unloading the weapons and distributing them to the rebel cells. Hale stood near the armory, ensuring that everything was accounted for. The adrenaline from the mission had not yet worn off, but there was no time to rest. "We've got more work ahead of us," Hale said, her voice as steady as ever. "The Dominion's retaliation won't be kind. We need to be ready." Mira approached, her gaze intense. "We are. Every move we make puts us closer to ending this war. Every weapon, every ally, every victory. It all adds up." "We've got a lot of enemies to face," Hale said with a sigh. "But we're not alone anymore. And neither are they." The message of the uprising had spread like wildfire. The Dominion's hold on the galaxy was weakening, and humanity, along with its allies, had become the tip of the spear. They would push further, strike harder, and never relent. The Eidolon was their vessel of change, and Mira was its captain. "Captain," Torek called from the doorway, his deep voice booming. "We've got a transmission coming in. It's the Varlak. They've launched an offensive." Mira turned swiftly, her heart racing. "Details. Major cities have fallen. The Dominion's lines are crumbling." Torek's eyes flashed with excitement. "The Varlak aren't stopping. They're pushing toward Dominion-controlled space." Mira's fists clenched. This was it, the beginning of the end. The battle had shifted, and they were leading the charge. "We'll rendezvous with them," Mira said, her voice filled with authority. "This is our chance to hit the Dominion where it hurts. We'll strike at their capital." Colburn's eyes gleamed with determination. The heart of the Dominion. "It's a risky move, but it could change everything." Mira nodded. "It will. But first, we need to rally the troops. It's time we gave the Dominion a fight they'll never forget." As the Eidolon surged into hyperspace toward the Varlak front lines, Mira stood tall, her thoughts clear. The road ahead was treacherous, but it was also full of promise. The war was far from over, but humanity, along with their allies, was no longer fighting in the shadows. They were fighting in the light, and they were winning. A new dawn was rising, and with it, a future where the Dominion's grip would finally be broken.